This is a key to the worksheet on topic 5, part D. And on this worksheet, you're solving each of these quadratic equations. And you're going to do this using the quadratic formula. And again, notice it says do not use any other method. And then simplify the radicals if possible. Okay, so let's look at number 1. Now, remember the quadratic formula you can use to solve any quadratic equation. So any quadratic equation of this form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, you can solve using the quadratic formula. And so remember the quadratic formula is this. So x would equal, since the variable is x here, you would say x would equal the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So that's the quadratic formula. So number 1, we have 4x squared plus 21x plus 5 equals 0. And so before you use a quadratic formula, it's a very good idea to make sure that your equation is in standard form. So standard form would mean that all the terms on one side and zeros on the other, which we do have here. Now, once you do that, you want to determine what a, b, and c are, because a, b, and c are values from your equation that you're going to substitute into the formula. So remember, a is a coefficient of x squared. So in this case, x squared, the coefficient is 4. So a is 4, comma. B is a coefficient of x. So in this case, here's x, here's the x term. The coefficient of x is a positive 21. And c is your constant, and so my constant here is a positive 5. And so once you find a, b, and c, you just substitute into your formula. So x equals, so this says that take the opposite of b. Well, if b is 21, the opposite of 21 is a negative 21. Plus or minus the square root of b, and always put these values in parentheses. So in other words, you're going to say, in parentheses, you're going to say 21 squared minus 4 times a is 4, times c, which is 5. All of that, make sure you say all of that. Don't skip any steps. Your statements must be mathematically correct. So you skip steps, like some students like to skip the part where they're dividing here. Mathematically, that's not correct. So you will lose points. So make sure you say divided by 2a. So divided by 2 times a, and a is 4. So you must say that. Okay, equal negative 21 plus minus. At this point, what you're going to do is you're going to simplify this radicand. Now remember, another word for this radicand here, that b squared minus 4ac, is the discriminant. So that's one of the lessons that either you've already learned or you will learn. But that's the discriminant. All right, so we're going to call it the radicand for right now. So 21 squared, use your calculator if you need to. So 21 squared is 441. So I have 441 minus, and then 4 times 4 times 5, so you say 4 times 4 times 5 equals 80. So 441 minus 80, all divided by, and then 2 times 4 is 8. So equal, and so I'm going to get negative 21 plus or minus the square root of, and then simplify the radicand, so you can say 441 minus 80, which gives you 361, divided by 8. All right, now at this point, you want to see if you can simplify the square root right here, this radical. And so what I would do first in each case, every time you get to that situation, is I would first of all determine if 361 is a perfect square. Because it's a perfect square, it makes things a lot easier for us. So one way to do that is to take the square root of 361. So square root button, see it's right above the x squared, so you have to press second x squared to get to it. So you see the square root, and then say 361 equals, and notice it's a whole number, so 361 is a perfect square. 19 times 19 is 361. So this right here becomes negative 21 plus or minus 19 divided by 8. Now in your lessons you learned that if this, when you take the square root of this radicand, and this radicand is a perfect square, and you get this, then what you're going to end up with is 2 rational solutions. Two rational solutions. So at that point, you're going to write your answer as rational solutions. So you're going to split this apart. So basically what you see here is that your solutions will be, x will equal negative 21 plus 19 divided by 8, and then negative 21 minus 19 divided by 8. And then you simplify that a little bit further. So negative 21 plus 19 is a negative 2/8, which reduced is a negative 1/4. So there's one of your solutions. Over here, I get negative 21 and a negative 19. If you don't know that real quick, just use your calculator. And so you get what? Negative 40. And so negative 40 divided by 8 will give you a negative 5. So those are your two solutions. So the solutions to this quadratic equation, there are two solutions, negative 1/4 and negative 5. All right, so if you substitute negative 1/4 and negative 5 into the equation, you're going to get on this side, you're going to get this to be 0. So 0 will equal 0. Okay, so that was number 1. Let's look at number 2. So number 2, we have this quadratic equation. Number 2. So we have 3a squared minus 10a plus 8 equals 0. And again, you want to use the quadratic formula. First of all, notice it is in standard form. So I have all the terms on one side, 0 on the other. So right away I can denote a, b, and c. So remember, a is a coefficient of in this case, a squared. So don't confuse this a with the variable a. Remember, a here represents this a that I have here, represents a coefficient of x squared, represents the coefficient of your second degree term. So just be careful because you do have your variable a here different from your coefficient a. So a is 3. So a is 3. B is a coefficient of your first degree term. So your in this case it's negative 10. So be careful with your sign. You got to keep the sign. So don't say b is 10. You got to say b is negative 10. And then c is your constant, which is 8. All right. And so in your formula, you're going to say now again your variable is a, so you must say a. So a equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Now, don't get this a confused with this a. All right, so this is your variable a here. So be careful. So you're going to get the opposite of b. So the opposite of negative 10 is a positive 10. So this becomes positive 10. Plus or minus the square root of, now remember, use parentheses here. So b, which is negative 10, squared, minus 4 times a is 3, times c, which is 8, all divided by 2 times a, which is 3. All right. Now we're going to simplify the radicand. So I get positive 10 plus or minus the square root of. Now be careful. You see how I put that in parentheses? So whenever you square b, b squared, this number that you get here better be positive or 0. It should never be negative. Because a negative times a negative is a positive, so be careful. So that should be 100. All right, so when you put this in your calculator, if you say in your calculator like this, if you say negative 10 squared, like I have it, then yes, you will get a negative 100. You're going to put negative 100, and that's incorrect. Because notice I put parentheses here, because b is being squared. Negative 10 is being squared. When you say this, you're saying only 10 is squared, and so that's why you get negative 100. All right, so be careful. Always put that in parentheses. Okay, and then subtract, and then 4 times 3 times 8. So 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 8 is 96. All divided by 2 times 3, which is 6. And so then I get 10 plus or minus the square root of 100 minus 96 is 4, divided by 6. And this one's an easy one. You all know that 4 is a perfect square. So I'm going to rewrite this as 10 plus or minus 2 divided by 6. And so notice that since 4 is a perfect square, I'm going to get 2 rational solutions. And so since those are 2 rational solutions, you're going to split it apart. So you're going to say 10 plus 2 divided by 6, and then 10 minus 2 divided by 6. And so 10 plus 2 is 12, and 12 6 is 2. So there's one of your solutions. So A is equal to 2. Over here, you get 10 minus 2 is 8. 8 divided by 6 reduced, and your other solution is 4/3. All right, so that was number 2. Okay, number 3, we have this quadratic equation, number 3. And so in this quadratic equation, we have 5x squared minus 9x equal 2. Now, the situation here is that if you notice, this is not in standard form. You got to bring this constant to the other side. So you got to have 0 on this side. So I'm going to get 5x squared minus 9x, subtract 2 equals 0. All right, so remember, you're going to have to subtract 2 from both sides, and so that's how you get this. Once you get in standard form, you can now determine a, b, and c of the quadratic formula. So a, remember, is a coefficient of your square term, so that's 5. B, remember, is the coefficient of your first degree term, so that's negative 9. And C is your constant, which is negative 2. All right, so it's very important you keep this, you have your signs being correct. And so your formula, remember, since my variable is x, you can say x equals the opposite of b plus the minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And so now we're going to just substitute these values into the formula. So x equals the opposite of b. Well, b is a negative 9. The opposite of negative 9 is a positive 9. Plus or minus the square root of b in parentheses, negative 9. I'm squaring that, b squared, minus 4 times a is 5, times c, which is negative 2, all divided by 2 times a, and a is 5. And so now I have 9 plus or minus the square root of negative 9 times itself is a positive 81. All right, now be careful here. So you see how you have a negative times a positive times a negative? So we're going to get a positive here. So 4 times 5 is 20. 20 times 2 is 80, right? Okay, and so, I'm sorry, 4 times 5 is 20. 20 times 2 is 40, excuse me. Let me make sure I wrote this correct. 4 times 5 is 20. 20 times 2 is 40. Okay, all right, so now we have all divided by 10. So that's 9 plus or minus the square root of, now 81 plus 40 is 121, all divided by 10. Now 121, you know, is a perfect square. So the square root of 121 is 11. So this becomes 9 plus or minus 11 divided by 10. And so again, notice since 121 is a perfect square, and when you take the square root of 121, you get this whole number 11. You're going to get 2 rational solutions. And so now you split it apart so you can determine what they are. So you're going to say x equals 9 plus 11 divided by 10, comma, x equals 9 minus 11 divided by 10. And so 9 plus 11 is 20, and 20 divided by 10 equals 2. So there's one of your solutions. Over here, that's going to be 9 minus 11 is a negative 2, and then divided by 10. And so your other solution, when you reduce, is going to be a negative 1/5. Okay, so it's number 3. And then finally, number 4. So the fourth one's this. All right, number 4, you have okay, so number 4, you have 2y squared plus 9y minus 5 equals 0. Okay, so notice it is in standard form. You have 0 on this side, so right away I can go directly and determine a, b, and c. So a is a coefficient of your square term, y squared in this case, which is 2. B is a coefficient of your y term, your first degree term, so that's 9. And c is your constant, which is negative 5. And so your formula, your quadratic formula, is going to be, your solution will be y equals the opposite of b plus the minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. All right, so we get y equals, so if b is 9, then the opposite of 9 is a negative 9, plus or minus the square root of b, which is 9, squared, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 5, all divided by 2 times a, and a is 2. So let's simplify the radicand. So I get negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 9 times itself is 81. A negative times a positive times a negative is a positive. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 5 is 40. All divided by 4. All right, and so we get negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 121 again, divided by 4. And 121 is a perfect square, so that becomes negative 9 plus or minus 11 divided by 4. And so since 121 is a perfect square, I'm going to get two rational solutions, so we're going to split it apart. So we're going to say y equals negative 9 plus 11 divided by 4, and then y equals negative 9 minus 11 divided by 4. And so over here, negative 9 plus 11 is 2, and so 2/4, one of my solutions reduced is 1/2. Over here, negative 9 minus 11 is a negative 20 fourths, and so the other solution would be a negative 5. So those are your two solutions. All right, so that's going to take care of the key to the worksheet on topic 5, part D.